The brilliant sunset painted the sky with oranges and purples. Masai's footsteps were lighter, and he practically skipped along the docks. His heart fluttered, and a warm leash of power beckoned him back across the Va. There was only one ferryman within sight, and he was in the process of tying off his vessel. He had noticed Masai as he got closer, and his expression got sourer the closer that Masai got.
I certainly hope you don't want to ride across! I'm done for the day!
Can you please take me really quick? I have important temple business with the Neferi necropolis.
And I have an important dinner waiting for me at home.
The ferryman crossed his arms over his chest and gave Masai a curious, weighing glance.
Ah, I recognize you. I ferried you over with your trainer.
Any sense of happiness within Masai's core faded and started to crumble. He gave a longing look across the river.
As I said, it's important temple business. I really need you to take me over, please.
Your temple business has nothing to do with me. Out of my way. I'm hungry.
Masai stepped in front of the man, squared his shoulders, and then gripped his staff tightly.
I'm sorry. Then you leave me no choice. I'm going to have to confiscate your boat on behalf of my mission.
The ferryman's mouth fell open, and he reared back away from Masai.
What did you say? You don't have the authority to...
Masai poked him in the chest.
I'm enacting the will of a divine being. I have the greatest authority there is. As I said before, I'm taking your boat.
And you actually think I'm just gonna let you take that from me?
The ferryman balled his fists.
I won't be robbed!
Masai swallowed hard, and then he infused his words with as much gruffness as he could.
If you try to stop me, I'll rot you to death, and you'll never get to go to R.
The ferryman slumped down a little, and his bottom lip quivered.
What? You wouldn't dare.
The will of Anakanti is greater than your life, or your afterlife.
A wave of panic spread across the ferryman's face.
I'll tell the city guards you threatened me.
Be my guest.
He moved past the ferryman, and his gut clenched like a fist. The mere notion of rotting another person sent violent spasms throughout his core. The ferryman watched him and whimpered a little.
Can't her will wait until morning? It's not like she's one of the primary five, or the goddess Dia either.
Masai got into the boat, and for a moment, the ferryman just watched him like a starving puppy, watching his masters eat dinner. He turned around and screamed out for the guards. Masai cut the ropes binding it to the pier and pushed the boat into the deeper part of the river. In the back of his mind, he knew great repercussions would come later. It didn't matter. Anakanti had given him a mission, and everything else could be damned. Masai had ridden a ferry many times, but he had never operated one. He knew he would have to paddle diagonally to cross the river, but the difficulty of actually doing it frustrated him. What should have only taken 30 minutes actually took more like an hour. By the time Masai got to the other shore, weariness and mental anguish pressed upon him. Paddling across a flowing river exhausted him, and he still had to walk to where he wanted to be. A pair of living jackals sat beside the entrance of the necropolis, and they watched him passively. When Masai got close enough, one of the jackals spoke.
You're expected. Follow me.
One jackal remained behind while the other one led Masai through the lonely collection of buildings. Jackals stood at nearly every alley opening, and they all watched Masai with keen, magical eyes. Their pointed ears shifted in his direction, and their noses sniffed the air.
How many of you are here, prowling about?
The jackal peeked back at him.
Every night, 10 of my kind run each of the cities that span the land.
You mean the cities of the dead, right?
The jackal studied him as they walked.
The places where the living dwell are only places to wait until they die. Inversely, the place where the dead dwell are only places to wait until they are born again. Your cities, as you call them, are not what you think they are. Your concept of living and dead is flawed.
Masai frowned.
What do you mean? How is my understanding flawed?
The jackal stopped.
Tell me, human, What is the relationship between the day and night?
The relationship? They're cyclical. They follow one another. They're opposites.
So too is life and death. Your flaw in understanding comes with your limited perspective of how to tell which is which.
Which is which? I'm still not getting what you're trying to say. I'm alive, not dead. I know that much for certain.
The jackal smiled.
Maybe you're alive. Maybe not. How do you know you're not dead waiting to be reborn, rather than living waiting to die?
Masai opened his mouth to respond, but then the words refused to emerge. He tilted his head, and then he really looked at the jackal.
You look familiar. Now that I think about it, have we met before?
Yes, we've met twice. My name is Harika.
You were the jackal who stood over Shanita.
Harika tilted her head.
I also found you all those years ago. Come, the master awaits.
The jackal walked down the street without checking to see if Masai followed her. He kept pace with the giant animal.
So am I dead or am I alive? You mentioned before I had different scents than a soul who was in transition. That phrase always stuck with me. Do we truly smell different?
Yes, but it's difficult for me to describe. It's more like a feeling connected to scent. Your soul smelled differently than Shanita's.
She turned left at the next crossroads.
But am I dead or am I alive?
Harika looked at him.
What do you feel yourself to be?
The clerics of Anakanti prepare the dead for the afterlife.
Are you so certain? Is it that way? Or do you prepare the souls of those who have died for the experience of rebirth? You are being snagged by your words. Words are a human invention to describe how things were, how things are, and how things will be. All the things you say are only a matter of perspective.
A matter of perspective.
Harika continued walking, and Masai got lost in the jackal's profound words.
So am I alive or dead?
Does it really matter? Will it stop you from preparing yourself for the next step after this one?
I don't suppose it will. Are you sure you weren't a cleric of Arcos before you were a jackal?
Masai nudged her.
Or maybe a philosopher? You're a deep thinker, Harika.
Harika's head drooped a little.
I wasn't anything before I was a jackal. I was nothing. Nothing until the master believed in me.
Masai stopped walking, and so Harika stopped as well.
What do you mean?
The jackal lowered her head slightly.
Follow this road, and take a right before the large building with the 5 pillars etched on the side. You'll find your new home there.
Harika walked away, without looking back. Masai stood and called the jackal's name several times before giving up. Masai's experiences with jackals had been very limited, but if he didn't know any better, he thought he might have offended Harika. He shrugged his shoulders and then turned to the large building with 5 pillars. His new home matched the size of the temple itself, and had beautiful paintings on its sides. Trees with multicolored fruit surrounded the large house. Several jackals lay under the trees. A balcony extended off of the 3rd floor, and the goddess Anakanti waited on the balcony. Large torches extended from the sides of the house and made the entire area bright as day.
Welcome home, my love.
Masai stood under the trees and gazed up. The fruit themselves also glowed with a faint light.
This is so unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it before.
A sudden pop blasted beside him, and Anakanti was there.
I know it seems like a lot, but we deserve the best. I will give you the tour after we return the relic to its rightful place. Do you have it?
Masai took it out and handed it to her.
I found out one of the clerics in our order tried to have this stolen.
He waited a moment before pulling out the chisel. As soon as Anakanti saw it, she frowned.
That is infused with death magic, all right. I do not understand why they think they can get away with such betrayal. Everyone sees me in the end, and I decide whether or not someone goes to the next step.
Masai squirmed a little, and then frowned. The death goddess's eyes shimmered softly in response.
What is wrong? You are troubled.
What is the next step? What is Is it the afterlife? Or is it another life altogether? Am I living, or am I dead?
A small, knowing smile grew on her face.
You have been talking to Harika, haven't you? She is such a philosopher. As per your question, it really does depend on your perspective.
Masai's frown deepened.
That's what she said. She asked me how we know we're not dead waiting to be reborn.
She is right. How do you know? It is funny, but you humans get so caught up on words. Sometimes you accurately describe how things are, and other times you are completely off.
Anakanti held up the relic. It flashed and then disappeared.
Where did it go?
Where it belonged. Do not worry about the tomb. I have already fixed it.
Anakanti grabbed Masai's hand and led him toward the entrance of the house.
Come, I want to show you what I have made.
Masai followed along, but he remained bothered.
I think I upset Harika.
Anakanti glanced back at him, a hint of concern in her eyes.
What happened? There is not much that can really upset her.
I made a comment that she must have been a philosopher or a cleric of Arcos in a past life before she was a jackal. Her mood changed and she said she was nothing before she was a jackal. What did she mean?
Ah, that makes sense.
Anakanti regarded one of the jackals and stopped moving.
They are all touchy about the time before they were jackals. It is okay, you did not know about them. It is not your fault.
Masai followed her line of sight.
What about them? Am I allowed to know?
All at once, the jackal's ears went back, as if in pain.
I will tell you inside. My babies are relaxing out here, so I will not inconvenience them.
Anakanti led him into the house. The house looked more like a palace. Marble tiles spanned the floors of the foyer, and beautiful tapestries and artwork hung on every wall. Above their heads hung a bizarre crystal that appeared on first glance to float in midair. As he walked along, he saw that a chain held it to the ceiling. Several little rods with little crystals on the ends extended from the central crystal. Each of the crystals emitted light.
What is that?
It is a chandelier, or so I am told. A friend described it to me.
A friend? I thought you said you were lonely in the land of the dead. That you only had the jackals to keep you company. Did one of the souls show this to you?
Anakanti grinned.
I was lonely until we were reunited. My friend is another death deity, like me.
Masai's eyes widened.
There are other death deities?
Yes, but not in our land.
She stepped forward and cupped his chin in her hand.
Do not be getting any ideas now. I will not have you spending time with any other lords or ladies of the dead. I do not want to share you with anyone else.
Her mere touch sent waves of pleasure throughout his skin.
You have my mind, my body, and my soul. So do you interact with this friend often?
Her smile waned.
No, not really. Every 100 years a gateway opens in my land. One that leads to a kind of common ground for any and all death deities. We have a festival to celebrate ourselves. I am not the only death deity who is underappreciated.
Wow. I had no idea.
The mere thought of other deities in other lands didn't surprise him. And yet, Masai had never realized other deities from other pantheons interacted.
So, can you tell me about the jackals now?
Yes.
Anakanti moved over to the window and watched several of the jackals playing together. Masai joined her and watched the large animals.
They are so precious, my babies. They are babies, you see.
What do you mean? Did you birth them?
Though she appeared delighted at first, traces of sadness lingered in the corners of her mouth.
What do you know of Dia?
Well, she has 5 children. The primary 5.
Anakanti winced.
What else do you know? I want to understand the breadth of your knowledge.
The Pharaoh is considered the High Cleric for her, so they and his family are given the right to rule. I remember hearing the only temple to Dia is in the Pharaoh's palace.
And what kind of deity do you think Dia is?
Anakanti stood facing him, and her arms and back were stiff. Both of her hands formed fists. Masai winced as he beheld her.
I used to think she was a kind of motherly goddess. But she's the one who placed all the restrictions on you, isn't she?
Anakanti didn't say anything, but her frown became more pronounced. The longer that they gazed into each other's eyes, the more wet and gut-wrenching her eyes became. Her fists shook slightly. The tears in her eyes shined like pure sunlight. Its brightness blinded him a little.
You can't say, can you? It's one of the secrets you carry.
Masai winced. A single tear fell from Anakanti's chin.
You are really intelligent, my dear, sweet Masai.
So what does Dia have to do with the jackals?
Dia has a deep hatred for stillborn babies. They are not allowed in Ar, and so when they die, they are cast into the land of the dead like rubbish.
Masai swiveled toward the jackals. Several of the large animals wrestled around and barked with excitement.
They're stillborn souls?
They were sad and lonely in their states. I could not bear to see them forever locked in baby forms. It was not their fault they were born dead, so I changed them. I filled them with death magic and turned them into jackal puppies. They grew into what they are now. They are happy, but they long for life. They long to have what you have. They deserve it.
Masai shook his head.
Why does Dia hate stillborn babies? I don't understand.
Anakanti remained silent and stared at the jackals.
Wait, were you stillborn? Are you a daughter of Dia?
Anakanti sniffled a little before she stepped up to Masai. She fell into him and she wrapped her arms around his torso. As she did, a great swelling twirled within him. Anakanti wept, long and hard. She actually shivered in his embrace, and she kept wiping her face on his shirt. It never really occurred to Masai how derogatory the term Primary 5 really was to his fair Lady Death. In that moment, he swore he would never use that term again. After a long while, Anakanti pulled away from him, although her fingers immediately interlaced with his. She beamed a mournful expression at him.
Thank you so much for that. I am sorry. I am usually not this emotional. It just wrings my divine soul over things that cannot be said.
You don't have to apologize for anything. I love you. And your pain and sorrow infuriates me. Do the Zur know about all this?
No, they do not. The only ones who know are the other death gods and goddesses, but they are not permitted to help me. The Zur exists to help me on my crusade to be raised to the pantheon with the other gods and goddesses. I wish they knew more. I wish I could tell them.
Maybe I could tell them. After hearing all this, how can I expect not to act?
What will you do, exactly?
First, I'll tell my friend Joyu about what I discovered from you. I'll help change the focus of the secret war.
What do you have in mind?
For one, we need to raise you in the eyes of the people. I think the best way to do that is to have a festival.
Masai held out his fingers, gesturing each point.
If we get the people behind our cause, we'll have more momentum. Second, we need to focus the Zur's efforts and mission. We need to force Dia not only to raise the restrictions on you, but to also raise the restrictions on the stillborn souls too.
Anakanti's eyes widened a little.
You are proposing to force the hand of the Creator. I am not so sure it is really possible.
It is if we start attacking cities and taking the temples of the Five. I'm not saying this is going to be easy, but something has to be done. It isn't fair for you or for the jackals.
I am not sure. What you say does make sense. You would have my Zur start attacking temples in order to force Dia's hand. That would surely draw the Pharaoh against us.
Masai wrapped his arms around her waist.
Let her come. She'll send her armies against us, but you have an army of zombies. We'll force the Pharaoh to beg Dia for a change.
Anakanti leaned in and kissed him deeply. The soft touch of her lips electrified him. His tight hug enveloped her in bliss. Wildfire spread throughout his entire body, and its source originated from his lower region. When she finally parted from him, she whispered into his ear.
And where will you stand, my love? Will you stir the people with the gentle hand of diplomacy, or will you lead the armies of the Zur into battle? I am afraid you cannot do both.
Where do you want me to serve?
It does not matter to me, as long as you love me. It is your choice to make, and I know you will make it in time when you are ready.
Her eyes locked with Masai's.
Come with me.
Anakanti took his hand and led him upstairs. Masai happily followed. The sunrise looked amazing, even here in the necropolis. Anakanti had left earlier that morning to go and judge souls in the land of the dead. Several jackals patrolled the city in the light of the most recent theft. Masai stood naked on the balcony, which felt odd to him. Though Anakanti said it belonged to the both of them, Masai still felt like a guest in the palace. After their initial fun, he and the goddess sat down to the best dinner he had ever eaten. Unseen cooks and servants prepared the meal and brought it out to them. Surely only the Pharaoh experienced this kind of grandeur. Though he enjoyed being waited on, he questioned if it really suited him or not. There would soon be war, and still the question burned in his mind. Where would he stand? Two paths stretched before him, both very dangerous and difficult. Masai could follow the road of the Zur, which would be filled with violence and blood, or he could be the diplomat to the people. The sound of scruffling feet caused Masai to turn around. He hoped it would have been Anakanti, but Harika stood beside him.
You smell differently.
Really? What do you mean?
Harika shrugged her shoulders.
You don't smell like you did before. Nor do you smell like the other souls who venture through our lands either.
You mean through the land of the dead?
Or it could be through the land of the living. Or rather, the land of transitions. It's all a matter of...
Yes, perspective. I see what you mean.
Masai walked over and tried to scratch Harika's ears. Harika accepted his attention, but kept her eyes averted from him.
So how do I smell differently? Or rather, what do I smell like?
I'm not sure. Before you and the Master got playful, you smelled like any other meatbag I've encountered.
Harika's nose sniffed the air around Masai.
You smell sweeter, and more sour than before.
A subtle snapping noise popped in the air behind him. When Masai turned around, he saw Anakanti on the balcony. She had a calm expression on her face.
I have returned. That went longer than expected.
She brushed her fingers through her hair.
I will admit, I may have rushed through the last few judgments and been far more lenient than I should have.
Anakanti stopped and then openly ogled at Masai's unclothed form.
Ah, that is a welcome sight to return to.
Her eyes squinted.
You seem different. Why is that?
Masai shrugged.
You're the goddess, you tell me.
He gestured toward Harika.
She said I smelled differently.
How does he smell to you?
Harika tilted her head.
I don't know. I've never smelled anything like this exactly. The closest thing it reminds me of is, well, us. Not quite like us, but closer than smelling like a human.
Anakanti scratched her chin as she peered at Masai again. Before she could speak, a distant shout caught them all by surprise.
Masai! Cleric Masai Yados! Come out!
Anakanti and Masai moved to the balcony and saw a pair of clerics standing out in the open. They stood beneath the trees, yet they didn't seem to see the trees or the palace.
They cannot see us. They see a large tomb before them.
The pair of clerics called out again and started to move away from the palace.
I should go to them.
Masai moved for his clothes, but Anakanti stopped him.
Allow me.
She snapped her fingers, and Masai became fully clothed and clean.
In the cities of the dead, I rule supreme.
Anakanti turned her attention to Harika.
Follow Masai until he leaves. If they try anything, kill them.
Harika nodded and followed Masai out of the palace. By the time he got outside, the clerics were out of sight. He had to chase down the clerics, calling after them. When they stopped and noticed him, they both glared at him with icy stares.
You will come with us. The Cardinal wants to see you.
Despite the gravity of the situation, Masai smiled.
So I'm in that kind of trouble, am I?
He grinned back at Harika, who was still unseen by the pair of clerics.
You would really try to harm me here?
They exchanged reluctant glances. One of the clerics spoke.
Don't be foolish, friend. You're all alone and a newly made cleric. We have nearly 10 years of experience between the two of us.
We're not your enemies, okay? The thing is, we both understand what you did. People need to respect our order more. Your actions have caused unwanted talk and attention.
Masai eyed both clerics warily.
Talk that I'm a Zur, or talk that I'm a traitor to the Order?
Neither of them said anything at first. One of them sighed and scanned the area nervously.
A little of both, I'm afraid. The Cardinal asked us to come here in hopes of finding you. He wants to get things straightened out. Please come with us.
Masai gazed over his shoulder to Anakanti, who stood on the balcony. In his mind, he heard her question.
Are you going with them? Or are you staying here?
Masai sent a message in return.
I have to go with them. I'm sorry. There's so much work to do, and it's long overdue.
What are you looking at? Is there someone else here with you?
Only great Anakanti. I'll come with you.
He followed the other clerics to the dock and boarded the ferry. A woman manned the boat, and she beamed a dark glare at Masai as he got into the ferry. Masai's heart quaked, and a deep longing resonated within him as the boat pushed off into the water.